Good afternoon and welcome to CompanyRoots. Today we're interviewing Ms. Sam Miller, the Global Head of Impact at Advanced Global Capital, a global impact investment management company looking to reduce poverty through sustained economic growth. Advanced Global Capital has financed 12,686 small and medium-sized enterprises. Ms. Miller, it is a privilege and we are truly honored to interview you today. My name is Raul Kavuru. I am a rising senior at St. Paul School in New Hampshire, and I'm the president of CompanyRoots. And I'm with my partner, Suresh Jasti, who is a rising sophomore at the Wharton School from Homedale, New Jersey, and he's one of the founders of CompanyRoots. So the first question that we always ask is, what are your company roots, and how do they help you in shaping your ideas and becoming the person you are today?
Okay, I'm a Penn grad, class of 90.
Yeah,
So
that's one of
that
our
definitely piqued my interest and I got
yeah.
my start in the world. At Penn, I guess your sort of general topic is help to young people and entrepreneurs,
Mhm.
perhaps social entrepreneurs, but the network at Penn was amazing. So my starting point there was finding out there was a kid named Wiggy who is at Penn, and I had never met Wiggy, but Wiggy's parents were ambassadors to the Czech Republic. And the backdrop is that communism and just imploded. And in 1989, I graduated in 1990. So just you had this massive redistribution of economic systems from centrally planned economies to ones that were meant to work based on market economic principles. So it was a fabulous education I got at Penn.
Yeah.
I was a Slavic studies major, like wonderful professors there. And as a student, it was just brilliant because these renowned professors would be like, okay, by the New York Times, this is history in the making. We're going to look at it together. It's fascinating. So then I graduated, wanted to get over there to see history in the making, and harassed this kid named Wiggy for long enough till I got a job through his parents. It started up a way to fast track English teachers
Yeah.
into the Czech Republic. So that's what I did for 5 weeks. And then that led to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah.
And I can talk about the middle part, but where I ended up is finding my passion in small businesses. So the job that I had in my mid 30s was at Align Technology, makers of Invisalign in Silicon Valley. So I started out there. I had just come from investment banking in London, moved back home to California, and they kind of put me in the marketing department. So I was like the finance person in marketing, did their national consumer advertising with media buys and things, then set up and launched their the outreach to the general practitioner market. So in dental work, there are about 1,500 orthodontists, about 150,000 dentists. So I got to figure out, how do we attack that? How do we educate dentists with the equivalent of, teach them to be comfortable in Invisalign? And what we found very quickly is in these small businesses, because that's what dentist office and orthodontist offices are, that one of the keys is the staff, the training, and the business side. So when people go to school for dentistry, they're not necessarily getting any business background. So there was lots of different fascinating models around how to achieve your goals, be they financial or otherwise. And I set up a department there, which was to help these small businesses grow, because Align Technology wants these small businesses to grow, not just at an organic rate, but at a really fast rate. It's a publicly traded company. Organic growth is not fast enough. So we're looking at ways of how do we really convince them that they want to adopt our product, make it easy for them to do that. And did that for a while. And after some time, decided that my purpose in life was something different than helping people have straight teeth. So I started my own company, sustainable business consultancy called Sun, XANH Consulting, and did work. I had 80% of my income was still from medical device companies, but I was working on socially beneficial projects. Like the next client was biomedical, and they have injectable fillers, which can be used, of course, to make your face look youthful, but also for patients with facial lipoatrophy, which happens if you have HIV/AIDS.
Yeah.
There's a medical purpose, and we had a financing to help them afford it. So I did that for a while, and then decided that I wanted to just throw my chips in, all in, sold my car. I owned a rental property here, so I had a source of income, and went to Vietnam and started a sustainable business consultancy there. I was working with fair trade companies. I was the only white person in the social enterprise train the trainer program in Hanoi. and started and ran a restaurant with a friend that's still there in Vietnam. So I was the only, my roommate and I were the only white people living in this tiny little fishing village very close to Hoi An.
Yeah.
So just kind of let it all go. And we had a 3-bedroom apartment. It was $100 a month, just living very simply, but really trying to put myself in the place of small businesses and entrepreneurs and social businesses in the developing world. And then I came back about 7 years ago, started working for Advanced Global Capital. Mm-hmm. So this is where these things align, and my passion for small businesses. So our goal is to get working capital in the hands of small businesses, because they're a really hard group to get financing to. So this is not, we're different from microfinance. There's a growing overlap there, but our mission from the beginning was to try to target those businesses which are slightly larger and formal in the formal economy. So they're not just a one-person show. They're registered, they're delivering products and services, they're big enough to issue an invoice, but they have to wait 60, 120, 180 days to get paid. So the business model that our fund has come up with is finding a way for that small business to sell their invoice to our financial partners. So Advanced Global Capital is based in London, where our AUM is 150 million, but we've gotten about $3 billion out to small businesses in 65 countries. And that's because we have this indirect model. So our model, we lend money to these financial intermediaries in these countries, and then they use our money for specific purposes. So they can't fund fossil fuels. There's a few of the avoid harm kind of things that we weed out, but mostly it's getting into the hands of small businesses. So women and people with the wrong religion or skin color, they are very much excluded from many of the formal systems in the world. So our model gets it deep down into the long tail of that. So that's where I am right now, and continue to be fascinated in learning about financial systems, how to do good, the private debt. We're a private debt fund.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my world. And so anyway, I operate in all those areas. I don't know which part is interesting for you to hear more about, but maybe I'll stop talking and have you guys.
That's an amazing backstory, and it kind of goes into one of our first questions, which was, what were your company roots and how did they make you the person you are today? So I think we got a pretty full-on answer for that. So I think it's amazing that you have multiple backgrounds, and it kind of started from somebody at Penn and just convincing your parents to get you a job. So very cool.
I'll just briefly go over the bit in the middle, because it's a lot. So the 5-week job in the Czech Republic led to me being the first person at the Soros-funded Central European University. So I was 23, 22 years old, and was tasked with recruiting the first class of economists for a 1-year postgrad program in economics there. And so we were recruiting from all these formerly communist countries. So we brought the professors in from abroad. So I did that and got to edit some papers. Then my boss became Minister of Foreign Affairs, so I went to work for them and did PR for the Czech Republic. In '93, the Czech and Slovak Republic split. So we were doing a lot in terms of positioning the country, and I was the token foreigner there that helped them to successfully launch, because it used to be the Czech and Slovak Federative Republics. And went to Citibank, where I got to work with mostly the local subsidiaries of international corporates. So I'm fluent in Czech, but was working with companies that had both the foreigner and the local aspect. Moved to London, did investment banking, high grade acquisition finance, focusing on emerging markets and media and telecoms companies. Then we catch up to the Aligned Tech. So just in case that's interesting to have all the little random bits and bobs. So it's a mix. I feel like it's great to get experience in lots of different areas. It depends on who you are as a person. I'm a generalist. Remember my first boss at Citibank who told me that. I'm like, whoa, this is like what? But I definitely now have a specific area that I'm really passionate about, and I've followed my gut there in terms of really honing in on especially women-owned small businesses. And
Mhm.
that's taken me to where I am. But I feel like, especially in today's world where things are more and more complex, having a general background is really important to knit together all those things and to see through silos and to see how all these different elements interact.
Yeah. And I noticed you also serve like with other roles in terms of like learning more things along the way. You also
Yeah,
serve as a CEO at Money in Motion and Zan Consulting. So can
that's
you describe those organizations as well and your role?
yeah. I'll explain how they. So Money in Motion is closely related to AGC. So it is so Janet McKinley founded Money in Motion, and
Mhm.
I'm the CEO of that. So it's just the two of us in that, and a strong in. So it's a family office, and we have our investment strategy. We call grants investments as well. So in our view, it depends on the problem, which tool you want to use to fix it. So our areas of interest: financial inclusion, climate change adaptation mitigation, innovative approaches to education, and humanitarian things. So in that role, we manage a portfolio of our investments and make grants just depending on what types of things are needed. This spring was a busy time. So
Mhm.
we made some grants to IGI, I forget what it stands for. It's a Berkeley affiliated organization to help with testing for COVID. We also have a whole bunch of respect for Kenny Arth. It's another family office, much larger than us, and CDFIs, community development finance institutions, are really hurting in the United States, and they serve small businesses. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
we made a deposit at a CDFI that's based in the Deep South.
Mhm.
So it's a federally, it was an easy way for us to make a bigger impact with our money. So we're looking always for innovative ways to catalyze money flowing to better purposes. So
Yeah.
over there, because they don't have any, they're in very poor areas, they don't have deposits, so their cost of funds is very high. So with like pretty much zero, there's not zero risk, but very low risk because it's a federally insured deposit, we could make a difference with that and add our name and voice to a trend to get people to get off their money. So Money in Motion's name comes from this idea that if you're so fortunate to either inherit or make a lot of money, it doesn't do any good just sitting on a bank account. Like you could make it, you should put it to use. You should
Yeah.
get it moving and different things. So we're still very much actively trying to figure out what that means in different asset classes. We are members of Tonic, which is the
Yeah.
impact investing thing. So we're committed to having a part of our portfolio be 100% impact. So we're exploring with different, we're in the research phase of how to actually do that in public markets. It's not as clear to us how you do that in public. I see how you can avoid harm, but doing good is, so we're looking at different approaches, but we're big
Yeah.
fans of private debt. So it's an eclectic mix. Like for example, one of our grants we've made is to the Marie Stopes Foundation. So it's kind of like the Planned Parenthood for non-US based like geographies.
Yeah.
And we liked it because women, A, and well-run organization, and B, if you look at the Drawdown is a great book, and it lists the different things that we can do to actually remove carbon from our environment, and educating women and girls and family planning is one of the top things that you can do for this planet. So that's a kind of example of how we look at the grants, is trying to get the most good out of wherever we're spending the money, but they tend to be that. So that's another role.
Yeah.
So Money in Motion owns the management company. So Money in Motion owns AGC, the investment manager.
Yeah.
So, and then, so that team is in London, but they have their own, and Janet and I each play an active role in the company, she as a director of it, and I as global head of impact for that
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And Sun Consulting is my own firm. It is not very active with all the other roles, but it's there. I'm sort of 120% committed with my time right now, but it started, that was the company that I founded years ago, and it remains there for various purposes if they should come up. But right now we're kind of charging forward with those two things and keeps us more than busy. and happy that we're able to make a good contribution. So I feel like the small businesses are operating in this really exciting area between philanthropy and impact investments.
I
So,
totally agree.
right?
So Rocco and I, like this summer, today's actually, it was our last day, but we interned at a CDFI called Community Reinvestment Fund. So I'm
You
not sure.
did. Oh, great. What did
Yeah.
you think of it?
What did you say?
What did you think of it?
I loved it. It was very research based. So, a lot of the things you're talking about, if I did that, if I heard it like a month and a half ago, I probably wouldn't have understand much of it. But, too much in the future, it all kind of makes sense to me, and the impact space is like really fleshed out in my mind now. So I think it gave me a lot of awareness as to how to use finance in a way other than Wall Street.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, But yeah, so that education that I kind of got as an intern at CRF, it gave me a lot of awareness about other CDFIs because they're one of the major ones, and so they kind of do lending to other smaller CDFIs. As there are over 1,000 now across the United States. So
Yeah.
you know,
It's
a
amazing.
lot.
Like a year ago, I don't think people before the COVID, I don't think people generally on the street were all that aware of small businesses, but I feel like there's just been this huge
Especially with
awareness.
BLM.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the term like BIPOC and then like Black owned is starting to be like a very something that'll actually like support your business because you want to support people who are small entrepreneurs who are supporting their community in their own individual way, and so that's just something that's really powerful for I think the both of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And obviously you mentioned like the field, like CDFIs is obviously gaining more awareness in the coming years, in the past years as well. So how have you seen the field of how has the field of impact investing changed in the last 10 years? And also how do you see this field growing in the next 10?
Yeah. Oh, it's changed so much. I forget the number. It's just multiples, right? And you can look it up on Gin. I think it's 15x. It's grown in the last 5 years. So the volume has exploded. It is estimated at 700 billion this year, up from 500 the year before. So it's surpassed philanthropy,
Yeah.
right? Philanthropy well, the last number I have in my head is like 400, but anyway, it was bigger than philanthropy last year. So it's grown a lot. It's still there's a whole, people call it the big tent. Like there's all sorts of little rooms in this tent, and that's great. I think there'll be matching. You have DFIs, you have high net worth individual. Like there's so many different types of interests here, and it's great. I look at it as a broader, like overall. You've got the corporate roundtable saying like, okay, we're not only going to focus on profits for investors, it has to include more. It has to include the stakeholders, including suppliers and our employees. So it like all of those things are positive trends, and I don't think they're going away unless a certain somebody gets elected again. And there's huge challenges in our current leadership there for that. But I think people are it's really hard to give up profits. The stock market's growing, but I think young people, especially millennials, they say, and really care about looking beneath the hood and where those profits are coming from and how, like a deeper look at it all. So from public through to private, I think this is going to continue to grow. It's just, I have to believe that it is growing. And I think for myself, I hope that people talk a lot about impact washing in our space. And there's an increasing number of different ways that you can get certified or get somebody else to put a stamp of approval. So I feel like that will continue to grow and get better, and I hope it does. My personal hope is that it also it becomes more inclusive than what I see in certain parts of the private sector, which is where AGC operates. So for most funds, for example, you can't invest if you're only an accredited investor. You need to be qualified purchaser, which is roughly $5 million of liquid net assets. So that's not a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of funds, like I spoke to Elvest the other day, which I love, just their marketing and some of the people I've met, but they're trying to get the ticket sizes reduced so that it is more inclusive of more people. So like in general, I love the trend in that, but I'd like to get more people able to invest in it. I think it'll strengthen and grow the market. Like we're close with UC Berkeley. We present usually every year at there's a cross departmental class in business school and public policy there, and we usually present on small businesses. And every time we do, they're really like, "Can I invest?" And we're like,
There is actually like a way now. There's a company called C-Note, and essentially you can put in your own money, and there's like a 2.75% APR. So it's not the highest thing in the world, but it is a way to just like, if you have a couple thousand in savings bank account.
yes, and there are some, and I applaud those. I know Kat, and not well, but yes, there are, and I'm hopeful that those trends will continue and make it more inclusive.
Yeah.
But most of the funds that are out there are like that, and just the underbelly of it all too is, even for those who are out there like, yeah, we're like the champions of this. If you are a fund and you are starting out and you don't have a 3-year track record, which by definition most startups cannot have a track record, you're born, right? And you're under 300 million, it's very hard to get an ear. So we call it the valley of death. So I just hope that we continue to expand and welcome in innovative ideas in this space, and also for underrepresented groups. And I see absolutely, like C-Note, and there are many other initiatives that are trying to grow and ensure that the innovation and the diversity remains. But as anything, it's young and it has room to grow and mature, and it has to become something that people continue to trust of what's happening. And we have to, for it to scale and have the largest impact as possible, it also has to be cost effective.
Yeah.
So, and for me personally, I feel like that's a piece of the conversation that isn't being talked about as much as would be useful, is the cost of measuring, tracking, all those things. So
Yeah.
So I think that will continue to evolve. And I hope that it does so in a way that is inclusive of younger startup funds, those started by people that don't look like the generally pale and male boards of VCs, all that stuff. It's not often talked about, but I hope that those are trends that will continue. But it's a great, I can't see it stopping. It's just the things that are going on in our world right now with a combination of COVID and the depression, or potential depression. There's just so much going on right now. It hopefully will be the silver lining that people re-examine what's happening, look at their portfolios and really examine what they own, and try to hold those companies accountable for that. And then people will move forward with things that are good for the world and themselves. And strongly believe that that's a trend, as I'm pretty sure you guys as well.
So one of the last questions I had for you was kind of based on going back to UPenn. They have a lot of impact programs now, and I think within the past couple years, they've really expanded what they define as social impact. And even in like Wharton, they have a minor for social impact now.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was really excited to go there for, because not many schools have adopted that, and it's a stage where within the next couple of years, I'm sure most schools will be like having forms of that in terms of like societies, but in terms of like an actual minor to take, I think that's one of the things where UPenn is kind of like spearheading in terms of universities. So I was going to ask you, what activities or classes back in the day helped you the most at UPenn? And kind of transition your mindset?
I was a rower at Penn, so that was hugely informative, but class-wise, so it was Professor Rubenstein, who is an esteemed Soviet expert. I loved his class. He's the one that told us that we should buy the newspaper and we discuss it together. And that, like, he was one of the most esteemed Soviet professors in the world. For him to have that humility to say, even we did not predict this, it was hugely empowering to just go through the process with
Yeah.
somebody like him to analyze Gorbachev. And I had a senior advisor who I wrote on the Center for Periphery Relations. He was Vladimir Tismaneu. So for me, it was the confluence of political, economic, social things that were going on in this really amazing time that probably had the most influence. I was also a women's studies minor, and I did a semester abroad, and it was through Antioch University. And another professor that I often think back to was one who did not give us an agenda or a curriculum. She made us develop our own. And for me, as a kid who was like always trying to get good grades, and it was a profound experience to develop that for yourself. And I think that was a great lesson to have. And just to, like, one of us was studying politics, and she like tried to interview Margaret Thatcher, and it just those releasing the boundaries, putting it on you to just like challenge yourself was. So all those are the top three that I can really recall. But my stepdaughter is 22, just graduated from UCSB, and if I compare my experience to hers, it was such a privilege to attend Penn, where I got to pursue pretty much any intellectual interest that I wanted to. I could do that there, and versus a larger school where you might be like, she got a 20-minute window to try to like dial into her programs, and you just got what was left. So it's just such a privilege to be able to attend a school like Penn, where you can study and choose what you want to study. I don't recall ever really not getting something that I really wanted to take.
Yeah.
Which is fabulous.
Yeah.
So.
And also within our generation, I'm seeing a lot of more kids involving them within the social impact field, whether it be like people in college or high school like myself. So one of the last questions that we always ask is, what advice would you give to the current generation of high school students that would like to start the process to make a positive impact on society? And how do you recommend they start this process?
High school students to start, I would say just be curious and relentless about searching out learning opportunities. And I guess it's kind of a cliche, follow your passion. I don't know that I would press heavily on that as much as, remember this is the time in your life. Every year is a high percentage of your total lifespan, but a year it's not that long. So just get as much experience as you can. Offer yourself to something that looks interesting, and have faith it will work out. Like I think that the temptation, especially for folks as motivated as you guys, there might be many opportunities to earn a whole bunch of money or go a certain direction, and that may very well be the right thing that people want. But I guess I would go for experience and enriching your life, and finding things that matter, and finding people that you identify with, that you respect, and figuring out what makes them tick, how to learn from them. And I don't know, that's kind of the strongest thing I can remember was just like always putting myself into a situation where I could learn the most and that I could have the most impact. So for me, money hasn't been a giant like motivator. I mean, I retired from investment bank. It wasn't my thing. But I don't regret the steps that I took, because I was able to have such a great influence and learn so much and grow. So that worked for me. But I was lucky I didn't have student loans, and there's a whole bunch of different things. So I'm very fortunate to have had that freedom to do that at an early age. But
and although it's like cliche, it's like, of course, like following your passion is like one of the best things to do in life. Like you said, you didn't like investment banking, which is why you chose impact investing. So
yes, true. Yeah, I just like being a stepmom of a 22-year-old. I also can feel the stress that it can put on a young person.
Mm-hmm.
asking them, what do you want to do? Or what's your passion? Like, how does I mean, you guys are brilliant exceptions to this rule of people who have made it happen. And that I applaud you for that. But for a lot of people, that is a huge task to really know. So I guess I just would dial it back a little bit, like give yourself some slack and just go for the things and have faith that if you're true to that path, you'll end up in the right place. But you don't, by the age of 25, you don't, like, just have faith. It'll work out. I'll think about somebody else, but yeah.
Well, thank you for letting us interview you today. It was an honor and privilege.